The mysterious arrival. It was a bright and sunny morning when the world suddenly changed. The skies above Earth, once clear and blue, were now filled with strange shapes. Massive ships, like nothing humanity had ever seen before, hovered over. Cities, casting dark shadows on the ground below. People stared up in awe and fear, unsure of what was happening. News stations quickly went silent, and social media exploded with confusion. No one knew what to think. Then, without warning, a figure appeared on the ground in the middle of one of the busiest streets in New York City. She was tall, towering over the people who stood frozen in shock. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. Her long hair floated around her head, as though gravity didn't affect it. The crowd stood in silence, unable to move, too afraid to speak. Some took steps back, while others just stared, wondering. If this was a dream. The figure slowly raised one hand, and a strange sound filled the air. It was like a soft hum, but it echoed inside everyone's mind. The air itself seemed to tremble with the sound, and it was as if every thought paused for a moment. People around her began to feel an odd sensation in their chests, as if something deep within them was waking up. They didn't know what was happening, but they knew this moment would change everything. The woman's voice came next, clear and calm. "I am here," she said, her voice floating through the air as though it were a melody. "I was a gift for you, human. Why haven't you accepted me yet?" Her words were simple, but they made the world stop. What did she mean? Why was she here? The people stared at her in silence, unable to answer. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't an evil smile. It wasn't a friendly smile either. It was a knowing smile, one that suggested she understood everything. But humanity was the one who still had questions. The woman took a step forward, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to change. A soft glow followed her every movement, and the air seemed to ripple like water in a calm pond. A few brave people in the crowd tried to speak, but their words failed them. It was as if the very presence of this being shut down their thoughts. Only silence filled the streets dot above them. The ships continued to hover, their engines making a low hum that could be felt in every bone of the people watching. They weren't moving. They didn't need to. The woman on the street seemed to have all the attention she needed. The world was paralyzed by her presence. A man stepped forward, trembling, his voice barely a whisper. Who are you?" he asked, his words barely escaping his lips. It was a simple question, but it felt heavier than anything anyone had ever asked before. The woman turned her gaze to him, her eyes glowing brighter for a moment. "I am the gift," she answered simply. "I am the key to your future, but you must first understand. Why haven't you accepted me yet?" Her words made no sense. How could she be a gift? A gift from whom? And why was she asking them if they had accepted her? The people around her didn't know what to do. Some backed away slowly, while others stood frozen in place. The woman's calm presence made it impossible to think clearly. The world around her felt different. It felt as though time itself had slowed down. And then, in the midst of the confusion, the ships above began to change. The lights on them flickered and pulsed in different patterns, sending out beams of light into the sky. It was as if they were communicating with each other, sending messages only they could understand. The hum in the air grew louder, and the people below began to feel a sense of pressure on their chests. It wasn't painful, but it was uncomfortable. It was as though something was trying to reach into their very souls. The woman stood still, her gaze never leaving the people before her. The entire world was watching. Was this the beginning of something new? Or was it a warning? The world had never felt so small. And the only sound in the air was her voice, as calm and soothing as ever. I have come to offer you a chance, she said, her tone soft yet powerful. A chance to join the stars, to transcend your limitations. You will never be the same again, but first you must accept. Why haven't you? The woman's words echoed in the minds of everyone who heard them. They felt them in their hearts, deep in their souls. It was impossible to ignore. But was it a blessing or a curse? As the woman stood there, waiting, the world held its breath. It was clear that everything had changed. No one knew what to expect next. No one knew if they could trust her. But one thing was certain. Humanity's future was now in the hands of a stranger from the stars. Asterisk, the gift revealed the city was still silent, the air thick with confusion. People stood frozen, eyes glued to the alien woman in the center of the street. The hum from the hovering ships above continued to vibrate through their bodies, a constant reminder that something monumental was happening. The woman's words echoed in their minds, her calm voice carrying an unsettling weight. Why haven't you accepted me yet? She asked again, as if it were the most obvious question in the world. For a few long moments, no one answered. Then, a voice broke through the stillness. It was a young woman, her voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. What are you? What do you want from us? She demanded, her words bold but laced with fear. She stepped forward, her heart racing, and for the first time, the woman's gaze shifted to her. The alien's eyes softened. I am a messenger, she said, her tone still as calm as ever. A gift from the stars, sent to show you the way. I am not here to harm you. I am here to help you. The words were simple, but they carried with them a promise of something extraordinary. The woman held out her hand, and as she did, a strange light began to pulse from her body, wrapping around her like a shimmering aura. The people around her gasped, some stepping back, others stepping forward in curiosity. It was like nothing they had ever seen before, pure, radiant energy that seemed to bend and twist with the air itself. I bring you knowledge, the woman continued. Knowledge that could change your world. Knowledge that could make you a part of something greater, something beyond your planet. Her voice never wavered, and for a moment it seemed as though the whole world was hanging on her every word. I bring you the keys to the stars, but only if you accept them, the crowd murmured. Some were drawn to her words, while others were skeptical. How could they trust her? How could they trust someone who appeared out of nowhere, offering them something so powerful? Their minds raced with 1,000 questions, each one more desperate than the last. What do you mean by keys to the stars? A man shouted from the back of the crowd. His voice was trembling, but his words held the weight of an entire world's uncertainty. The woman smiled, a glimmer of something ancient in her eyes. I come from a race that has traveled across galaxies, she explained, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. We have watched your species for millennia. We have seen your potential, but you have not yet realized it yourselves. Her eyes met the man's, piercing into his very soul. I offer you the chance to transcend your limits, to leave behind your wars, your struggles, and embrace a future of peace, prosperity, and limitless exploration. The crowd was still, a tense silence hanging over the street as the weight of her words sank in. Peace, prosperity, exploration, these were things that humans could only dream of. Yet here she was, offering them all in a single sentence. The thought was tempting, but the fear that lingered in their hearts was hard to ignore. Could they truly trust her? She continued, her voice now softer, almost coaxing. I bring you technology far beyond anything you have ever imagined. A gift not just of machines, but of wisdom. Wisdom that can heal your planet, elevate your minds, and bring you closer to the stars than you ever thought possible. Some in the crowd looked to each other, doubt and hope battling in their eyes. It was too much to comprehend, too much to accept in a single moment. But even as the uncertainty lingered, something else began to stir deep within them. Was this the moment they had been waiting for? Was this the opportunity to escape the cycle of war, famine, and division that had plagued their world for so long? One brave soul stepped forward, his voice shaky but filled with curiosity. "What happens if we refuse?" he asked, his words carrying the weight of an entire planet's hesitation. "Will you leave us alone? Will we stay as we are?" The woman's expression didn't change, but her eyes deepened, almost sorrowful. "Refuse, and you will remain as you are," she said softly. "The stars will remain out of your reach. You will continue to fight, to struggle, to search for answers that have been hidden from you. The choice is yours, but know this time is not infinite." Her words struck like a hammer, each syllable carrying the weight of the universe. There was no going back now. The world stood on the edge of a new era, a fork in the road, and humanity was being asked to choose which path to take. The temptation of the unknown pulled at them, but fear held them back. Could they take the leap? Could they trust a gift that came from the stars? The alien woman tilted her head as though she had read their thoughts, and a knowing smile touched her lips. "The gift I offer is not just for the taking," she said. "It is for the worthy. But the question remains, are you ready?" The crowd fell, silent once again, the tension hanging heavier than before. The gift was there, right in front of them. But would they take it? The resistance as the alien woman's words hung in the air. They seemed to settle over the crowd like a heavy fog. The offer of transcendence was powerful, almost too perfect to refuse. Yet, with every promise, there was a lurking fear. What did it really mean to accept her gift? Could humanity trust her, or was this just another form of control, masked by the allure of peace and prosperity? Among the masses, a few brave individuals began to speak up. A murmur spread like wildfire. There were whispers of distrust, of rejection. Some argued that humanity should not bow down to an alien race, no matter how tempting the offer seemed. They didn't want to be dependent on someone from the stars. They feared losing their independence, their humanity. And within this rising tension, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man with the fire of defiance in his eyes. His name was Lucas Carter, a former military officer, known for his leadership during times of crisis. He had been part of humanity's defense systems for years, and now he stood ready to lead a new kind of resistance, not against alien invaders, but against the temptation to rely on them. "We cannot let this happen," Lucas spoke, his voice cutting through the crowd, strong and determined. "This is not a gift, it's a chain. You think this woman and her promises of peace will save us? No, it's just another way to control us. We're humans. We don't need a cosmic hand to guide us. We can find our own way." The crowd's reaction was divided. Some cheered, feeling the same unease. Others recoiled, questioning if they were being swayed by fear rather than logic. The alien woman, still standing in the middle of the street, turned slowly towards Lucas. Her eyes shone with a cold, knowing light. "You misunderstand, human," she said, her tone no longer soothing, but still unthreatening. "I am not here to control you. I am offering you the chance to evolve, to reach beyond your borders, beyond your world. But you are free to reject it. The choice is yours." Lucas' heart pounded as he stared at the alien being, whose calm demeanor only deepened his suspicion. Was she truly offering a gift, or was she testing humanity's ability to resist, to reject the unknown? Was this her way of measuring their worth? "She says it's a gift," Lucas muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "But gifts are meant to be freely given, not with strings attached." The woman tilted her head, as if considering his words. "You are correct, Lucas Carter," she said, her voice still unnervingly calm. Gifts are indeed freely given. But you must understand that not all gifts are easy to accept. Not all gifts are free from challenges. And not all gifts are meant for everyone. Some are for the worthy. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some eyes shifted nervously between the woman and Lucas. Was he challenging the very fate of humanity? Was his resistance what they needed to truly decide what kind of future they wanted? Or was he playing into the alien's hands, giving her exactly what she wanted: confusion and division? A woman, older than most, stepped forward, her face lined with age and wisdom. She was quiet at first, but then spoke softly. "Perhaps Lucas is right. Perhaps we should choose for ourselves. But can we risk refusing? If we turn our backs on this opportunity, will we be left in the dark forever?" Lucas felt the weight of her words settle like a stone in his chest. How could he be sure? How could anyone be sure? He had seen the wreckage of human history, the wars, the suffering, the endless struggle. But would joining an alien race, no matter how well-meaning, erase the very essence of what it meant to be human? As the debate raged in the streets, the woman spoke once more, her voice carrying over the chaos, cutting through the noise with a force that made everyone pause. "Humanity is at a crossroads," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "The stars are within your reach. You can join us, or you can remain in the darkness of your own making. But know this: time is running out. The choice will not be available forever." Her words hung in the air, like a dark cloud waiting to burst. It was clear that the clock was ticking, that whatever decision humanity made in this moment would define their future. And yet, the division between acceptance and resistance was growing stronger by the minute. Some people shouted in agreement with Lucas, their fear of the unknown outweighing the hope of peace. Others cried out for humanity to embrace the unknown, to take the gift and let go of their ancient fears. The streets were alive with voices: fear, anger, hope, and confusion, all crashing together in a storm of emotion. And as the alien woman stood silently, watching the chaos unfold before her, Lucas could see the faintest flicker of something in her eyes. It wasn't fear or anger, but something else, something darker, more ancient. Was this part of her test? Or was this simply the calm before something far more dangerous? The ships above began to pulse with light again, their engines humming, louder, like the foreboding sound of a distant storm. It wasn't just the Earth that was waiting now. It felt like the entire galaxy was holding its breath, watching humanity make its choice. But as the resistance grew stronger, the stakes grew higher. The question was no longer just about accepting the gift. It was about what would happen if they rejected it. Would the alien leave in peace? Or would her presence on Earth signal the start of a new kind of war, one where humanity wasn't ready to face its place in the stars? Asterisk a test of trust, the streets of New York had become a battlefield of words, with people shouting, arguing, and pleading. On one side, there was the overwhelming allure of the alien woman's promise, the hope of peace, the promise of a future beyond the stars. On the other side, a fierce resistance led by Lucas Carter, a military man who had seen enough bloodshed to know the dangers of blind trust. And in the middle stood the woman, as calm and composed as ever, observing the chaos unfold before her. She had said it was a test, but of what? Was it humanity's ability to trust, or was it a deeper test, a challenge to the very nature of human identity? Lucas stood at the front of the resistance, his jaw set tight, eyes scanning the crowd. The alien's words had struck a nerve. "You must understand," she had said, "that some gifts are for the worthy. The question is not whether you deserve them. It is whether you trust enough to take them." Now that challenge loomed over him. He had seen the devastation that had come from trusting too easily, how alliances and promises could crumble, how civilizations could be manipulated by those with power. But could humanity really afford to pass up this chance? The alien woman, sensing the tension, raised one hand. "Let me show you," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a calm breeze. "Let me show you why you should trust me. The test will not be one of violence or force. It will be one of understanding. Come, all of you. Let me show you the future you could have." With a slow, deliberate movement, the woman raised her other hand, and the air around her shimmered. People gasped as the world seemed to shift. Pavement beneath their feet rippled like water, and the skies above twisted and danced with colors they had never seen before, brilliant blues, purples, and golds. The ships above, once static, now began to glow, projecting images in the air. "Behold," the woman whispered, her voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "This is what awaits you if you accept the gift." Suddenly, the crowd was no longer in the streets of New York. They were standing on the edge of a vast, open sky, looking out over an alien landscape. Massive, glowing cities stretched out in the distance, with buildings that defied the laws of physics. Ships far more advanced than anything humanity had ever built zoomed across the skies, leaving trails of light behind them. It was a world where technology and nature lived in harmony, where disease and hunger were things of the past. People stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide as they took in the breathtaking sight. Some reached out to touch the air in front of them, as though they couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was real, this world, this future was real. But Lucas wasn't moved by the beauty. He wasn't interested in the world they could have. He was thinking about the price. What would it cost to gain all of this? And could humanity handle it? Was this a promise, or was it a trap? The woman watched him closely, her eyes never leaving his. "You see it now," she said softly. "This is the future you could build together. But you must trust me to guide you." Lucas felt the weight of her gaze. It was too perfect, too beautiful. But something inside him tugged, urging him to question everything. "What's the catch?" he asked, his voice steady, though his heart pounded. In his chest, "What's the cost of this future? What do we give up to have it?" The alien woman's eyes flickered, a brief moment of hesitation crossing her otherwise serene expression. "Trust is not without its challenges, Lucas Carter," she said slowly. "The cost of this future is not one of currency or war. The cost is a choice between what you know and what you could become. You must be willing to let go of your past, your fears, your limitations." The crowd murmured again, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncertain. Let go of their past? Could they really do that? Humanity had fought so hard to build its history, to preserve its identity. Could they truly leave all of that behind for an uncertain future? The alien raised her hand again, and the vision shifted. The beautiful landscape began to fade, replaced by a harsh, stark reality images of Earth's current struggles: pollution, war, famine, and suffering. The streets were filled with poverty, the skies covered with smog, and the oceans polluted. Humanity's past, its mistakes, were laid bare before them. "This is the present," she said, her voice hardening slightly. "This is what you have created. A world divided, broken, and on the brink of collapse. If you do not accept the gift, this will be your future. You will continue down the path of destruction. This is what you will lose if you turn away from the stars." The images faded, and the woman stood before them once more, her expression unreadable. "The choice is yours, but time is running out. Can you trust me to help you? Or will you reject the future I offer? Only you can decide." Lucas' heart raced. The weight of the decision pressed on him. Could humanity truly accept the gift, despite the risk? Could they trust an alien being whose offer seemed too good to be true? The crowd was silent, waiting for someone to speak. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. But Lucas knew one thing for certain. The test had begun, and it wasn't just a test of trust. It was a test of humanity itself. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they let fear and uncertainty hold them back? Asterisk the revelation. The tension in the air was thick, like the calm before a storm. The crowd stood in awe, each person lost in their thoughts, trying to process the alien woman's offer. The vision of Earth's future had shaken them, but it had also left them questioning everything they thought they knew. Would they accept this gift from the stars? Could they truly trust this mysterious being? Or would they reject the opportunity? Too afraid of the unknown? Lucas Carter stood at the forefront, his mind racing. He had always believed that humanity's strength lay in its ability to overcome obstacles on its own, without help from outside forces. But now, faced with a future so bright and yet so uncertain, he wasn't so sure. The alien woman, sensing the confusion that hung in the air, stepped forward. Her presence was calm, almost soothing, as if she carried the weight of centuries in. Her gaze, "I see the doubts in your eyes," she said softly. "But you must understand, this gift is not just mine to offer. It is for the entire galaxy." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The crowd, still unsure of what to think, continued to stare at her in silence. For the first time, Lucas felt the full weight of her presence. She wasn't just offering a better future for Earth. She was offering humanity a place among the stars. "You see," she continued, "I am not the first to offer this gift. My people, the ones who sent me, have watched the universe unfold for eons. We have seen species rise and fall, and we have seen how the universe rewards those who are willing to evolve. My people, we believe in the strength of unity, in the power of transformation. But we also believe that every species must choose its path." Her eyes locked with Lucas's. "The true test is not whether you can accept this gift. It is whether you are ready to leave behind your past the divisions, the anger, the fear, and embrace something greater. It is whether you are ready to become part of a cosmic family." For a moment, Lucas thought about the weight of those words. The divisions on Earth ran deep wars, poverty, hatred. He had always believed that humanity had the strength to rise above its mistakes. But could they truly move beyond them? Could they leave behind the very essence of what had defined them for so long? The alien woman seemed to sense his inner turmoil. "You are not being asked to forget who you are," she said, her voice soft and reassuring, "but to transcend. To take what you have learned, your strengths and your weaknesses, and use them to grow. To evolve." The crowd murmured, some starting to understand what she was asking. This was more than just a technological gift. It was an invitation to change everything about who they were. The promise of a better world was tempting, but the cost was steep. Would they be willing to accept a future where they were no longer defined by their past? Lucas took a deep breath, his mind racing. He thought of his family, his comrades who had fought alongside him. He thought of the suffering he had seen, the battles fought in the name of freedom. Was this alien woman's gift worth the risk? Was it worth changing everything humanity had ever known? Then, as if to answer his question, a low hum began to rise from the ships above. The sky began to shimmer again, but this time the colors were darker red and gold, swirling in an ominous dance. The alien woman's eyes hardened, and she took a step back, her expression becoming grave. "This," she said, her voice now full of urgency, "is the true test. Time is running out. You are not the only ones who are watching." Her gaze turned skyward toward the ships that hovered above, their lights flashing in patterns that no human had ever seen before. Suddenly, The ground beneath them trembled. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the city, like a far-off earthquake. The crowd gasped, stepping back in fear as a shadow stretched across the sky. Something was coming. Something much larger than the ships that had been hovering for days. "We are not alone," the alien woman said, her voice low. "The galaxy is full of dangers, and your enemies have seen your potential. They will stop at nothing to prevent you from joining us. This gift I offer you is not just a blessing, it is a protection. But the decision to accept it, to take this step toward evolution, is yours." The ground continued to shake, and the ships overhead began to move, their lights flashing in frantic patterns. The alien woman's expression grew more intense, her gaze shifting between the crowd and the sky. "It is time for you to decide. Will you accept the gift and stand together, or will you turn away and face the consequences?" A deep silence followed. The air was thick with tension as the crowd looked up at the ships above, uncertain of what was to come. Was this a test from the alien woman? Or had something else come? Something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Lucas turned to the people around him. Fear was visible in their eyes, but so was something else, hope. The alien woman had shown them a future they had never dreamed possible. But could they trust her? Could they trust the gift? He looked back at the woman, whose eyes were now full of expectation. "What happens if we say no?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked up at the ships once more, then back at the crowd, her face hardening. "If you say no," she said slowly, "you will face the wrath of those who have already rejected the gift, and you will do so alone, without us." The ships above began to move faster now, and Lucas could feel the shift in the air. The alien woman's words were no longer a warning. They were a countdown. Humanity was about to face a choice, one that would shape the future of the entire galaxy. Asterisk the final decision. The rumbling grew louder, the ground shaking beneath their feet. The sky above darkened as the ships moved in formation, casting long, foreboding shadows over the earth. The alien woman's calm demeanor had shifted to one of quiet intensity, her eyes scanning the sky as the tension in the air became palpable. The time for talk was over. Now it was about action. The crowds around Lucas began to stir, whispering among themselves, eyes wide with fear. What was happening? What had they gotten themselves into? The aliens' words rang in their minds. If you say no, you will face the wrath of those who have already rejected the gift. But who were these enemies? And why had they waited until this moment to show themselves? Lucas stood frozen, watching the ships move into a tighter formation, their once bright lights now dimming into a ghostly glow. The alien woman stood tall, her expression grave, as if she knew something they did not. She turned to face him, and for the first time there was no smile on her face. Her eyes were filled with something far more serious, something that could no longer be ignored. "Do you understand now, Lucas Carter?" she asked, her voice low, almost mournful. "This decision is not just about your people. It is about the future of the galaxy itself. If you say no, the balance will tip. And what happens next will not just affect Earth, but every species that stands in the way." Lucas felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Every species. It was clear now that the stakes were far greater than humanity alone. The fate of countless civilizations hung in the balance. And yet, the choice before him still felt impossible. The resistance around him was starting to break. Some of them had already begun to move away, their voices filled with doubt. They were afraid of what rejecting the gift might mean. Afraid of being alone in the galaxy without the protection of the alien race. The promises of peace, of unity, were too tempting to ignore, but Lucas wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. Humanity had always fought for its survival, its freedom. To simply accept this gift without question felt wrong. What would it mean for humanity to abandon everything it had ever fought for? The price of peace, he feared, was not freedom, it was control. Turning to face the woman. His voice was steady but filled with defiance. What if we say no? He repeated, his eyes locking with hers. What if we choose to fight our own battles without your help? The alien woman didn't flinch. You will fight. But you will not fight alone. Not anymore, she replied, her voice resonating with an ancient weight. The galaxy will be forced to choose sides, and they will watch what you do next. If you choose to reject this gift, then you will face the consequences of a galaxy that does not forget. Suddenly, the ships above began to flash with light, signaling a change in their movement. They shifted, realigning in a formation that was anything but peaceful. Lucas felt a rush of adrenaline. The war had already begun. A voice suddenly called out from the crowd, one of the leaders of the resistance, a woman named Elena. We can't just hand ourselves over like this. This isn't who we are. She stepped forward, her eyes wild with conviction. We don't need the stars to save us. We can save ourselves. But her words were met with resistance. Another person shouted in response. We've been fighting for too long with no end in sight. She's offering us a chance to escape this cycle of destruction. Why can't you see that? The alien woman's gaze moved over the crowd as the arguments grew louder. There was no stopping the debate now. The people were divided, torn between those who believed they should take the gift and those who couldn't bear to give up their independence. Lucas knew the decision was his, but the weight of it seemed unbearable. As the alien ships began to move closer to Earth, the air seemed to crackle with energy. The woman turned to Lucas, her expression now unreadable. This is your final chance. You must choose. Accept the gift and join us in the stars, or reject it and face a future where you will have to fight alone. Lucas stood in the middle of the growing chaos, his mind racing. The path ahead was unclear, but he knew one thing. If humanity chose to stand alone, they would have to be ready to face the consequences. The alien woman had shown them the future they could have, but at what cost? Would they be willing to sacrifice their independence for the promise of peace, or would they continue the struggle on their own terms? He looked at the people around. Some hopeful, others terrified. The weight of their future rested on his shoulders. And just as he was about to speak, to give his answer, the sky above erupted with an explosion of light. A brilliant burst of energy, blinding in its intensity, tore through the atmosphere. And in that moment, Lucas realized he was no longer in control. The galaxy was watching, and the decision had already been made. Asterisk.